Second reading, sir?
Yes.
Would you like to take them one at a time? Or
Oh, no.
Together?
Yes.
Yes, sir. 7A is an ordinance changing the boundaries of the town of Medley, Florida, amending the town's municipal charter to provide for the annexation of certain lands pursuant to Section 604B of the Home Rule Charter and Chapter 20 of the Code relating to the area referred to as the Medley, Section 9, Section 14, Section 15, and Section 31 annexation area, with approximate outer boundaries for Section 9 on the north by Northwest 90th Street, on the south by Northwest 74th Street, on the east by Northwest 87th Avenue, and on the west by Northwest 97th Avenue. For Section 14 on the north by Northwest 74th Street, on the south by State Road 934, on the east by Northwest 72 Avenue, on the west by State Road 826 Extension. For Section 15 on the north by Northwest 74th Street, on the south by Northwest 64th Street, on the east by State Road 826 Extension, on the west by Northwest 87 Avenue. And for Section 31 on the north by Northwest 122nd Street, on the south by Northwest 106th Street, on the east by the Florida Turnpike, and on the west by Northwest 107th Avenue, providing for reservation to the county of utility tax revenues, providing for county retention of residential garbage and refuse collection and disposal unless certain circumstances occur, requiring payment of certain outstanding debt service attributable to the annexation area, waiving the provisions of resolution number R62322 with respect to requiring the town to pay mitigation to the county, providing for county retention of jurisdiction over certain declarations of restrictive covenants in areas of facilities of countywide significance, providing for contingent effective date, providing for interdependency, inclusion in the code, and an effective date. Item 7B is an ordinance changing the boundaries of the Village of Virginia Gardens, Florida, and amending the village's municipal charter to provide for the annexation of certain lands pursuant to Section 604B of the Home Rule Charter and Chapter 20 of the Code relating to the area referred to as the Virginia Gardens Annexation Area, with approximate outer boundaries on the north by Northwest 36th Street, on the south by State Road 836, on the east by Miami International Airport, Northwest 55 Avenue, and on the west by State Road 826, providing for reservation to the county of utility tax revenues, providing for county retention of residential garbage and refuse collection and disposal unless certain circumstances occur, requiring payment of certain outstanding debt service attributable to the annexation area, waiving Section 20-28 of the Code, which would require the village to pay mitigation, waiving the provisions of resolution number R60622 with respect to requiring the village to pay mitigation to the county, providing for county retention of jurisdiction over certain declarations of restrictive covenants in areas and facilities of countywide significance, providing for contingent effective date, providing for interdependency, inclusion in the code, and an effective date. And Mr. Chair, item 7A is cross-referenced with item 11A1, which is on your pull list, and 7B is cross-referenced with item 11A2, which is also on your pull list. Would you like to take all four items together?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Any of the colleagues like to discuss?
On item 7A?
I got 7A. I have an amendment
7A?
to 7A.
All right, we'll take up 7A first. Madam Attorney, can we take them together, since I'd venture to say most of our sentiment is a holistic view on both, or do we have to take
It's
one by one, 7A first? All right, so Senator Garcia.
and Mr. Vice Chair, also Commissioner Gonzalez had also requested to bifurcate on both of these stuff as well, just for your information.
Perfect. Commissioner Cabrera after Senator Garcia. Commissioner Bermudez.
Point of order?
Commissioner, I see where you're going with it. It's Commissioner Bermudez's district on one of them, and it's Commissioner Cabrera's district on the other. So 7A is whose district? Commissioner Bermudez. All right, Commissioner Bermudez, you're recognized.
Okay. First of all, this item has been up for, well, this issue has been floating around for almost 19 years. I'm not going to reiterate what I said last time, but it's my opinion that it's time to move forward with this annexation for the town of Medley without payment of any mitigation. Consistent with this commission's determination on recent annexations, I again repeat that to change the rules in the middle of the game makes no sense. And at this point, what I would like to do is move forward with the resolution that I proffered for the town of Medley, and would submit a motion for approval.
Second.
We're still in discussion. And Senator Garcia, you're up unless you need some time on 7A.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the amendment, and I respect, obviously, the commissioner in the area, but we too have been discussing this for quite some time. And in speaking with the members of the town of Medley and seeing what the mayor's recommendation came back with, originally it was 7 years, and we came back, we brought it down. We had a motion at the last county commission meeting to have the mayor negotiate a deal that was no more than 4 years. That was the instructions that this county commission voted on to give the mayor. The mayor comes back with a recommendation of 4 years, and speaking with the municipalities, the municipality itself, they wanted 3 years. So, truth be told, I figured out, bring people to the middle. One wants 4, one wants 3. And the amendment that I have before us right now is 3.5 years of mitigation, because at the end of the day, it is a tax shift that will impact UMSO, but I think it gives enough time for the county to balance itself out and see where the differences will come and not do it from one moment to the next. So that's the amendment that I have before you. What is that? No more, no less.
Thank you, Senator Garcia. Mayor, you're recognized for comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to make it very clear, as I've stated here on the dais and in my memos, that I do strongly support communities' right to self-determination, and mitigation is an essential tool that does ensure that proposed annexations don't and won't jeopardize our ability to provide essential county services or impose an unfair burden on taxpayers outside of the annexation area. And the UMSA budget largely goes to public safety. It largely goes to our police. So it's critically important that we're able to provide continuing safety for not only those who live outside the urban development, but to all of our residents and our visitors, not just the 1.2 million that reside in UMSA, but everyone who spends time in the greater Miami-Dade County. So based on our analysis, a mitigation policy of 4 years moving forward may allow enough time for UMSA to recover the revenue loss and make adjustments to balance while maintaining services. But just to be very clear, as it stands today, even with our predicted 8% tax roll growth, which is uncertain, we are going to face a $15 million deficit in the UMSA budget by 2025. 2025, we will have a $15 million deficit. So it's not just about this vote. This will set a precedent for future annexations without sufficient mitigation. And we're concerned that if we don't have at least 4 years, it's going to force this board to make hard choices sooner rather than later and in the not too distant future, including public safety concerns, which are funded through the UMSA budget, or alternatively to raise taxes, cut services. Those are the choices. So this is especially true as we consider future unfunded mandates. We do not know the full impact of the constitutional offices, our capital infrastructure needs. So we urge this board to be very mindful and to protect both the city's rights to self-determination and our taxpayers countywide. And we urge you to move forward with adequate mitigation for these annexations. Thank you.
Commissioner Cabrera, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to have a motion that the attorney will read shortly, but for many years, these incorporations and annexations have been implemented in an inconsistent and arbitrary way. Commissioner Martinez proposed and Commissioner Regalado sponsored later on an ordinance that allowed property owners in situations where you have less than the 250 voters to vote to have a voice. While that ordinance does not apply to the annexations in Virginia Gardens, I think it is important to give a voice to these property owners who in many cases are small businesses. So I have a motion that the attorney is going to read instructing the department to conduct a survey of these businesses so that we can see where exactly they stand. I think it's important for them to have a voice to make sure that this is an equitable and fair process.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Bermudez. Let me just say, just because I see that nothing is truly resolved. So from my perspective, where we are as a body is the mayor vetoed these items. The mayor vetoed the items, and we reconsidered instead of actually dealing with the veto. So if we pass it, if I recognize Commissioner Bermudez and he passes it and it gets vetoed again, we're back exactly where we were in December. And so I just think that probably we ought to consider that. And I don't know whether this helps the folks in the decision making, the town of Medley. And I don't plan to vote to override a veto the next time. I don't plan to vote that. So I don't know how you will vote. I don't plan to vote to override the veto. This is why. The mayor didn't actually want 4 years, and we compromised to 3.5. The mayor wanted 7 years, and she came down to 4 because the commissioner, the senator, asked as a compromise. Now, if we can't work this out now, we're just back here in 2 weeks dealing with, I mean, as I see it, another mayoral veto. So I would have hoped that this would have somehow worked out in the interim. We had an all Christmas break, all New Year's break, and we're still in the same spot. So I'll recognize you, Commissioner Bermudez, and then Commissioner Gonzalez, but I want you all to know, just from a procedural perspective, we're looking more and more like a hamster wheel on these items. And we'll be back here again. Commissioner.
First, just a point of clarification from Commissioner Cabrera. I share his opinion that the businesses should have a say. I agreed with Commissioner Martinez and Commissioner Regalado, who both brought up at different times. In fact, I brought it up vehemently when this August body, not all of us were here, but Madam Mayor chose not to take a similar position when the city of Sweetwater, which I also represent, which, by the way, still has 219 undeveloped acres of an area that is much more valuable than either of these areas that we're talking about, an area which is brand new and doesn't require work, which Medley will have to put a lot of dollars and effort into fixing, in particular Section 15. So, again, I'm going to go back to the process. I think it's patently unfair to treat different applications who are in the same process in a different way. I think that that's a terrible way to do business. I think it's a terrible way to represent the citizens of Miami-Dade County. And I agree with Commissioner Cabrera that moving forward, there should definitely be, and it's his choice in Virginia Gardens, if there should be, in fact, some sort of, and I'll support that, some sort of survey or poll done to figure out what the business owners are at, which is what I insisted upon when Sweetwater was being annexed. But Medley is a little bit different. There hasn't been yet one complaint filed by any of the businesses in the Medley area. This has been going on for 19 years. Now, Mr. Chair, out of respect to your comment to try to get these things moved forward, I have 2 questions. Madam Mayor talked about 4 years of annexation, and the memorandum from Senator Garcia talks about 3.5. So there are representatives from Medley here. I represent the area. If it's there, I would request, if you would permit, that a representative from Medley come and state their opinion as to the acceptance of the 3.5 years of mitigation. And if so, I'll be more than happy to then do what the municipality I represent wishes to do. But the reason we're here, again, I want to be clear, the reason we're here, and I don't want to, I know all of you had difficult positions. There was a different chairman. But what happened, giving up an area that is brand new, which this county even gave incentives to Telemundo and others to move into without nary a discussion, without not talking to the business owners, in fact, rejecting the letter from Telemundo saying that it was not the proper thing to do, and then doing this to Medley and Virginia Gardens and Doral and whoever else is in the pipeline right now, is not being consistent with the process. And I think it's I wish, Madam Mayor, with all due respect, and I have a great relationship with you and respect you immensely, I wish you would have vetoed even if it had been overridden, because then we wouldn't be having this discussion. I wouldn't have had a problem if you had vetoed Sweetwater, and we would have known, and others would have said, okay, there's no mitigation for Sweetwater, because then I could have those discussions with my colleagues very clearly, as opposed to having to do it from this dais. So that's my 2 cents. I still disagree with mitigation for municipalities that are in the process, but I would like to see if Medley, if you permit, Mr. Chair, can give us their opinion on your suggestion.
We're gonna do that. First, I have a couple of people in queue that have to. They've been raising their hands. Regalado and Higgins have been. So let's do that, and then let's hear from them. Oh, I'm sorry, and Gonzalez.
So, okay. Just really quickly, and I want to thank Commissioner Bermudez for his comments. You know, I think this has been a very difficult decision for us because of the intellectual inconsistencies, right? And we have two responsibilities here. I think we have to provide a path for municipalities so that they have predictability. You know, all laws and policies must be predictable. And I think changing the rules in the middle of the game is problematic. But at the same time, we keep changing the rules in the middle of the game. So if you change the rules in the middle of the game consistently, then consistently what you do is you change the rules in the middle of the game, right? So unfortunately, changing the rules in the middle of the game is our policy. I don't agree with that, but I'm glad to see that the mayor finally mentioned the constitutional officers. I think that is the dividing line. There has to be a line in the sand, and I've said from the very beginning, since the first day I sat on this dais, that the constitutional officers were going to change the face of this county. I asked for money to be set aside. We brought the items. It's still not done, you know, and I believe, and I've said it every time we talk about these issues, we should put a pin in all annexations until we figure out the constitutional officers. It is the future of our county. The projections that you are looking at now from the administration regarding the impact that these changes are going to have on UMSA are not real numbers, because we still do not know what the constitutional officers are going to cost us. So the deficits that we have in our 5-year plan past 2024 are just that. They're estimates that are not based on reality, which is why we need to proceed with caution. And I've said it once, twice, 3 times over, right, that this is going to cost us more than we think it's going to cost us. Now, that being said, we're also here to support the commissioners of the district. And that's why I seconded Commissioner Bermudez's motion. He knows his district better. I agree with him. I think the problem here is that the flag was not raised during Sweetwater, but it is what it is. It is what it is. And we need to decide as a board, what do we do? Are we going to allow the commissioners of the district to decide what is best for their district? Is the administration going to be consistent in their application of mitigation? Are we going to be consistent in the application of mitigation moving forward? And when we have a discrepancy, will that discrepancy be determined by the commissioner of the district or the mayor? I think it should be by the commissioner of the district. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, at least my previous colleagues, the newer folks may not know this. I tend to be consistently against annexations, and very rarely vote for them, particularly when it's talking about essentially taking commercial land and raising taxes for these people with no voice and no vote, and lowering taxes for other people. So there just seems to be something fundamentally unfair about that process, and it makes it very difficult for business owners to predict, particularly small business owners, what's next. So you may remember from multiple votes, I voted against all of the annexations here. That being said, we do live in a democracy, and we did vote to let Medley and Virginia Gardens go forward. And I think as long as we accept this negotiated of 3.5 years, 4 years of mitigation, I will support these interlocals, because as a board, we've already said it's okay to go forward with this incorporation. Now the question is, what is the terms of that? And mitigation matters to me because of UMSA. UMSA is, as I always say, the best deal in the county. If you want low property taxes, you want to live in UMSA. But UMSA also requires, it's a great geography, it requires services, it requires police, it requires fire, all of these services that these 1.2 million people only get to depend on the county. And so if we as a board consistently give away UMSA, we have to figure out how do we provide services to these areas as they go, as they now become more disparate, right, and more disconnected. It's actually sometimes more expensive to provide those services. So for me, the mitigation is important. I think it shows respect on the part of these municipalities. Medley, quite frankly, is the one that makes the most sense. This is industrial land to be managed by a city that really is all about managing industry. And is expert at it. But the others are, quite frankly, just trying to lower property taxes for their residents, even though their residents knew exactly what they were doing when they moved into these places. So, listen, if I were mayor of these towns, I'd try to do the same thing. But we have to remember as a board that we also represent 1.2 million people that live in UMSA. And I don't have a stitch of UMSA, really. I think I have a tiny bit on Fisher Island. But basically, I don't represent any people that live in UMSA. And when I meet folks from outside of my district, they're like, oh, I can't vote for you. And I always remind them, well, that's okay. It doesn't matter. I can vote for you. And so even though I voted against these annexations, if on both motions there's a minimum of 3.5 years of mitigation, then I will support these interlocals today so we won't get into a quagmire of recycling another mayoral veto. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And to go off what the commissioner has just said, my district is comprised 100% of UMSA, and that is my issue with the annexation aspect of it and not having any mitigation. With that being said, I have the utmost respect for the commissioner of the district, Commissioner Bermudez. I understand where he's coming from, but. And maybe staff can correct me, but the way that I see it is that even with the 4 years of mitigation, the net revenue loss to the UMSA budget is an estimated $517,000. Additionally, right, if the town's millage rate of 3.2 mils is applied to the property folios in the sections, the average property owner would pay an additional $1,900 in Section 9, $710 in Section 14, $1,600 in Section 15, and $15,000 in Section 31. I do understand where the commissioner is coming from, but this will create a negative fiscal impact for UMSA, which is 100% of my district, and for that reason, respectfully, I cannot support the item.
Madam Mayor, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify, first of all, about constitutional officers. At the direction of this board, a reserve was created. It was funded last fiscal year and this fiscal year. So obviously, we continue to provide updates, and we are eager to be sure that we're doing our very best to predict and prepare. I also want to make a very important point, and I've made it here on the dais, and I've made it in my memos. Any of the exceptions to the mitigation were under the guidance of the ordinance. So they didn't have to be approved, but they were approved, but they followed the guidance of the ordinance. And David Clodfelter, our budget director, can describe in more detail, but specifically the reason for Sweetwater, just to be clear, is that the area had a negative fiscal impact to UMSA of $576,000. And the code allows for an exemption in the case of an annexing municipality's per capita taxable value being less than the average per capita taxable value in the county. So that is why that mitigation was within the guidance of the ordinance, as other exceptions also, and that was all outlined in my memo to this board.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I recognize the mayor or council from Medley, I want to just add a couple of things. And I appreciate and respect all my colleagues. I just want us to remember that when we talk about being deferential to the commissioner of the district, there is a point where that actually runs contrary to your mandate. So your service is not to vote for your district. On some things like code enforcement and stuff like that, and maybe some zoning stuff, okay, but things that clearly have a countywide impact, like this, or in the alternative, like when Barbara Jordan was here, Formula One, or in the alternative, the UDB, those are things that you don't get deference for stuff that has countywide impact like that. And so I know that's been kind of a practice, but that type of parochialism is one of the things that actually stops us from moving forward as a county. And so we are county commissioners. You are a county commissioner elected from a district. You sit to speak for the best interests of the entire county with equal vote on every item. And so I will always pay special deference or attention to what a district commissioner says about their district, because they might know the stores better and they know the height of billboards better. But in truth, when you're talking about, honestly, the question that we're asking is whether in 3 or 4 years we're going to raise taxes in UMSA or substantially cut services in UMSA or force annexation in UMSA. If we're just going to speak directly to the issue, I can go with the will of this body, but I just need everyone who's here. If you don't want any mitigation, when it's time to either cut services or raise taxes, don't get squeamish then. Because this decision affects that decision. And so we probably need to connect those dots in our heads, because we're going to be the body who makes those decisions. Senator, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that, because I was going to make a comment towards it, so I echo your sentiments. We can't pick and choose when we are going to pay deference to the county commissioner of the area, because I've seen it here time and time again when we really don't. On certain issues, we want to pay deference, but when it has a countywide impact, then we go ahead and do whatever we want to do and change our votes and so forth. So I want to make sure that I agree with you that this does have a countywide impact. Whether you agree with it or not, it does have a countywide impact. And I think it's time for this county commission to start acting as a one county and look at it. Listen, we're not going to agree with each other every time on our districts and what we do, what we don't do, but we do have to start looking at this county as a whole. And this is, I think, what brings a breath of fresh air to all of us here now, where we are looking at that, holding each other accountable, seeing what's going on in each other's district, and paying attention to what's going on and making sure what impact that will have in all districts. You know, fight for your district, fight for our districts 100% of the way, all the time, obviously, but let's make sure that we look and see what everyone else is doing, and let's not pick and choose when we have to choose, when we have to say it's deferential, we have to be deferential to that county commissioner and that district, especially when it has a countywide impact. So, Mr. Chairman, I echo your sentiments 100%. And I do have that amendment on here. See if we can do that or not.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council. Yeah.
Good morning. Michael Pizzi. I'm the town attorney for the town of Medley, and we have the Honorable Mayor Roberto Martel. I'll be brief. The position of Mayor Martel and the Vice Mayor and Town Council of the town of Medley is as follows. After almost 20 years of pursuing this annexation process, number one, we want to thank Commissioner Bermudez, the commissioner of the district, for his never-ending and steadfast support for the town of Medley's annexation efforts. And Mayor Bermudez, the mayor and council are grateful and appreciate your support today, and we adopt and agree with your comments today. On behalf of the mayor and commission, thank you, Mayor Bermudez, for your support. After 20 years of pursuing this, Medley is willing to accept and would ask you to support the compromise in order to resolve this today and move it forward. After 20 years, it's time to move the Medley annexation forward. They've compromised. They've adopted to every request. We want to thank the mayor, the county mayor, and we want to thank our good friend and former Senator, Commissioner Rene Garcia, for your help in helping to resolve this. So at this point, the town of Medley's position is we will accept and ask for support for the compromise as the option to get this forward and get this approved so Medley can move forward. And thank you very, very much. If there's any questions, myself or the mayor are here. Thank you.
So just to be clear, you're accepting the 3.5, but not the 4, which is the mayor's perspective.
I don't know if the mayor's accepting the 3.5.
She has not.
Okay, well,
We 4.
only, well, Medley's position is this. Medley, after 20 years, wants to get this done today. Obviously, no city would want to pay mitigation or pay more than they have to. Medley will accept, if we would prefer the 3.5 years, we appreciate the senator's support. If in the end of the day, the 3.5 years is going to result in another veto, then we would support the 4 years. We want to get this done today without a veto. Thank you.
That's what I would like also.
It's my motion.
It's your motion. So you want to move what?
I would move Senator Garcia proffered 3.5, or am I mistaken? Since you're carrying, I mean, you're not carrying the water, but since I'm mistaken, what did you suggest? 3.5 years or 4? Huh?
So,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
like I said earlier, I'm just trying to meet. She was proffering 4. The mayor was proffering 4. They wanted 3 in some of the conversations. I'm just meeting halfway, trying to work out a compromise. That's what
Okay.
I'm trying to do.
May I ask Madam Mayor if she would veto the 3.5?
You can ask her. I were her.
I don't know if she's going to answer.
Never
But
answer that. But yeah. But go ahead, Madam Mayor. You're recognized for an answer.
Well, thank you.
if you're going to
very-
speak as a mayor, you got to be able to answer the questions.
Thank you to all of you for asking me, and I definitely would seriously consider a veto. As was said very clearly, 7 years is a figure that already creates a deficit of $15 million by 2025. I'm here to be mindful of the needs of the entire county, and we do not know the impact of the constitutional officers. I am very, very concerned about the future, and at this moment, I cannot say in good conscience that I am comfortable lowering it any further.
Mr. Chairman,
We'll accept, Mayor Martell will accept the
Okay.
4 years.
Mr.
We
Chairman,
don't
4
want
years.
another veto and come back
I
out
don't
to come
want
back
to veto.
in.
I want to go forward. I want to
Thank you very much.
and the county to go forward.
Mr. Chairman, since it's my motion,
Yes.
then we'll accept if there's a second for. I'd like to amend it. Well, hold on a second. I got a couple of questions. Can I ask a couple of questions before I
Sure.
make a decision?
Go ahead.
Let's first of all, let me make reference to the word deference. I don't want anybody to be deferential to me. I didn't get elected to have you be deferential to me. Okay? Let's begin by that. But you were definitely deferential, some of you, when the former chairman of this commission took 2 of the most valuable parcels of property for this county, okay, of which there are still 219 acres undeveloped. As to Mr. Clodfelter, I had the discussion with him this Friday. To tell me that the people of Medley, which are extremely, there's about 600 some odd people, most that live in trailer parks, are somehow in a better position than the city of Sweetwater, that this commission has let grow by taking 3 of the most valuable commercial parks and industrial parks in this county is to me abhorrent. I do believe that there has to be deference given to the commissioner of the district on certain things, but I don't want any of you to be deferential to me on this issue. I am not voting for this issue, Madam Mayor, Mr. Chairman, because it's in my district. It's a matter of principle that you do not change the rules in the middle of the game. Or if you felt that way in the summer of last year, after the Planning and Advisory Board had already made their comments, which, by the way, were not to necessarily allow Sweetwater to annex those 2 very, very, very valuable areas, and playing with numbers to make it, to give the impression that, and anybody that's been out there can tell you that the area that Medley's going to annex is going to take a lot of work to fix, and the area that Sweetwater was given is not going to take anything to fix. So, I want to be clear on the deferential thing, because I never asked for deference. I asked for logic, integrity, and honesty. Obviously, that didn't carry the day. So I'm going to amend my motion on Medley's annexation to 4 years. Madam City Attorney, clarify what I would have to do, amend it to 4 years of mitigation payments?
Yes, Abby could read in the amendment for you.
Commissioner Bermudez, this would be a motion to amend item 7A to require and it's a little bit different from the motion that was distributed, which was for 3.5. It would be a motion to amend item 7A to require as a condition of annexation that the Town of Medley make annual mitigation payments to the county as recommended by the county mayor in an amount of $543,000 per year, adjusted for inflation for a period of 4 years, and to revise the references to waiver of mitigation to only waive Section 20-28 of the Code and Resolution Number R-62322 to the extent that they would require mitigation payments for a longer period of time. The motion is also to amend item 11A1 to make corresponding changes and require corresponding additions regarding mitigation payments to the interlocal agreement attached thereto that was previously executed by the town. Conforming changes to both items shall also be made. The amendment that was distributed referenced 3.5 years of mitigation in multiple sections. So those sections would be revised accordingly to reference 4 years instead, and I can provide a copy to the clerk for the file.
Thank you. It's so moved by Commissioner Bermudez, second by Commissioner Regalado. Any other unreadiness on this item? Okay. This is a resolution or ordinance. We need ordinance.
This would be a roll call vote on 7A as amended and 11A1 as amended.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Cohen Higgins.
4.
Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Gonzalez.
No.
Commissioner Hardiman. Commissioner Higgins.
Yes.
Commissioner McGee.
Yes.
Commissioner Regalado.
Yes.
Commissioner Steinberg. Commissioner Bastian.
Yes.
Commissioner Bermudez.
Yes.
Commissioner Cabrera. Vice Chairman Rodriguez.
No.
Chairman Gilbert.
Oh, yes.
Motion passes 10-2.
All right. That's one down. Madam Attorney?
Yes, Mr. Chair, you now have items 7B and 11A2.
Okay. 7B and 11A2. All right. Was this bifurcated by Cabrera? There you go.
So I think there was some confusion on my previous comments. I think I said them on the previous item as opposed to this one. So I'm not going to have you all have to hear them all over again. So they apply to this, and the attorney has a motion.
Well, you have.
If you all could restate this motion. This is for the survey, right? Of the businesses.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to read the motion at this time?
Sure.
Commissioner Cabrera moves to defer items 7B and 11A2 to no date certain and directs the county mayor or county mayor's designee to conduct a survey of the property owners in the proposed Virginia Gardens annexation area and to prepare and distribute a written report to this board with the results of such survey on or before March 28, 2023. Thereafter, such report shall be placed on an agenda of the full board without committee review pursuant to Rule 5.06J. The survey shall be conducted pursuant to the provisions provided in the motion that was distributed. And these provisions are similar to the new annexation survey provisions contained within ordinance number 22-127.
I'll second it.
Second.
It's been moved and it's been seconded.
I've got a question.
Yes, I got some questions.
I'm gonna support it because, as I said before, I think that it would be good policy moving forward in areas where there are no residents to have the businesses give their opinion, whether it's Doral, Medley, Virginia Gardens, wherever. Obviously, even though this one's in the pipeline, I do give deference to Commissioner Cabrera, who I know has had to deal with, since they confused him with me last week on the issue of the businesses. But I'd like to ask Madam Attorney, attorneys, two questions very briefly. Number one is really a comment and a question, which is, can I get a list of every annexation from 2000 on that's been and is there a way to get that's happened since 2000 on, including the Sweetwater one that just recently happened, but others? And can I get a real understanding of what the fiscal impact is to the county, not one of Mr. Clodfelter's, perceptions of what's there and what's not there. And that's the first thing. Is there a list? Because there's been a lot of annexations. Let's start with the Dolphin Mall. I'm assuming we can figure out what the real impact has been to the county because the property values have gone up. Sweetwater hasn't lowered their tax rate, and what we would have received as a county. Is it possible to get that list?
Commissioner, we can work with the administration to develop a list of the annexations that have been approved since 2000. With respect to the fiscal impact, I think we would need to defer to the administration. There would be fiscal impacts, and perhaps the commission auditor. There would be projected fiscal impacts in the various agenda items that accompanied those proposed annexation items at the time, and that can also be provided to you.
Right, and the reason why I ask is because, and this is the discussion I had with Mr. Clodfelter the other day, there is no way that you can convince me the process that was used to make the argument for Sweetwater really is first of all, it's not logical, and second of all, it was done to mask a decision to be able to give backing to that decision, which I think is, again, not good government. If you go out to West Dade and you see the Dolphin Mall in the two areas, those are the two other square miles that have been annexed by the city of Sweetwater, which, by the way, are 3 times the size of the city of Sweetwater, you cannot tell me it didn't cost the county money, and there is no reason now why the city of Sweetwater should not have the, the city of Sweetwater should not be better off than most other cities because of something that occurred here. Out of deference to the chairman of the commission, which saddens me. But I'd like to get on the record that you're going to provide these numbers, number one. And then number two, I would ask you a very simple question, which I know the answer to. Since it was an inequitable process with Sweetwater, what would be the chances if somebody challenged that inequitable process, in your opinion, as the county attorney or county attorneys?
I'll just.
Let them answer.
Well, no, we're going to. No, we're not. We're not going to do that because we would be offering a legal opinion that could state something contrary to our interest at a public hearing. No, we're not going to. That's a question that you can feel free to answer that question privately. You all can have those discussions with him privately, but we're not going to advise people on how to sue us publicly. I'm never going to do it, so yeah. So we're not going to do that. But you all feel free to have those conversations. You're recognized, Commissioner Regalado.
Thank you. Just quickly, and I want to thank Commissioner Cabrera for talking about the item that we passed, which, by the way, I don't know if you've watched that meeting, but it was very polemic. And we've talked over and over about how, we get half the story, right? Because it really just depends on who shows up, who's for, who's against, and then we kind of have to up here do the math, and then we get calls and we get letters. It's very chaotic. So that's why I always said, if we had a survey, if we kind of went out and took the pulse of it, we would be able to use that as a data point. And I think that helps no matter what the outcome. I don't think that skews the outcome. I think that it provides us with data, and we should be making these decisions, based on data, not based on, who decided or who knew to come down here or who knew how to get in contact with the commissioner. So I think that it's very thoughtful, and at some point you have to start applying it. So it is what it is, and I'm happy to support you on it.
Anybody else wishing to speak? No. That being said, so we have a motion and we have a second. So since it's not the actual item, a voice vote will suffice, right, Madam Attorney?
Yes, if this is on the deferral to no date certain plus the motion.
All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes. And the item.
There is a second motion that the attorney was going to read regarding a different annexation.
Okay, but we just voted on this motion, so this one passes. So the item is deferred.
This is a deferral on items 7B and 11A2 to no date certain. Yes, sir.
Yes. So all in favor say aye to no date certain. Aye. All right, motion passes. Madam Attorney, let's move into the,
I think Commissioner Cabrera has a second motion that Abby will read.
I had a second motion that the attorney was going to read regarding Miami Springs, a different annexation, of applying the same, basically applying the survey for that annexation as well.
okay, Madam Attorney, you're recognized to read Commissioner Cabrera's second motion.
Thank you. With respect to the City of Miami Springs requested annexation, Commissioner Cabrera moves to direct the county mayor's designee to conduct a survey of the property owners in the proposed Miami Springs annexation area and to prepare and distribute a written report to this board with the results of such survey on or before March 28, 2023. Thereafter, such report shall be placed on an agenda of the full board without committee review. The survey shall be conducted pursuant to the provisions distributed to this board, which are the same as the survey provisions for the Virginia Garden survey.
So it's so moved by Commissioner Cabrera. Is there a second?
I'll second it, but I've got a question.
Seconded by Commissioner Bermudez. And since
I just have a question. This was going to be one that the county attorneys can answer. I think, if the chairman lets me do it.
Go
ahead. Did the Miami Springs annexation ever go to a vote in front of this commission?
Yes, it did, Commissioner Bermudez. It was the ordinance on the annexation was before this board on November 1st, and it failed on first reading.
Okay, so a little bit different from Virginia Gardens. It's not there, Commissioner Cabrera, just to be clear, and I support you. You want to get the opinion of the potential business owners if that annexation came back up again, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
all right, so
Supportive.
there's a motion, there's a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes.